derby was created in the 1930s as a diversion for Americans suffering from the Great Depression.
Make a date and see them skate at the roller derby.
By the early 70s, the derby had grown into one of the most popular spectator sports in America.
Them skate at the roller derby. Where you'll find everyone having barrels of fun. Yes, you will. Hey!
Roller derby was created in 1935 by a Chicago promoter named Leo Seltzer. Modeled on the era's popular dance marathons, the first games were actually more of an endurance test than a sport. Teams of one man and one woman would skate for up to 40 straight days around the bank track in an imaginary cross-country race. The events were a hit around the Midwest. But as the competition grew, so too did the bumps and blocks. By 1938, those marathons had evolved into the game we know today. The players traveled as a unit, actually living inside the venues where they played.
The room was paid for, 3 meals a day, everything, just about everything was taken care of except their laundry. They did not make much money, but it was more of a kind of a traveling family than anything else.
This was the most unique group of people you'd ever want to run into in your life. Most all of them came out of depression, real strong people, knew what it was not to have, worked hard to get what they could get, and roller derby was a great situation for all of them.
But just as the sport was getting off the ground, starting to attract more attention, tragedy struck the Derby family.
Well, that afternoon that the bus left St. Louis, they were going to bring the rest of the skaters to fill up the second unit in Cincinnati. That bus blew a tire and tipped over on the door. And what happened was an explosion, and then the second explosion. And there was 20 out of 22 died in that bus accident. And Mr. Seltzer, it seemed like overnight he had pitch black hair. It seemed like he turned white almost.
Leo was ready to shut the derby down, but the players fought to keep it alive.
They thought that their fellow members who died would have liked this to go on, and that the roller derby come that close to being closed. Sad part of our famous life, I guess you'd call it.
As a tribute to those who died, the jersey number 1 was forever retired. A tradition that has continued in the new game as well. The derby weathered its tragedy and continued to grow during the war and throughout the 40s. But there remained one city that Leo Seltzer just couldn't seem to crack.
We had been in New York in 36, 46, the Polo Grounds, and he says, this is our last time. We have to make New York or we're beat.
He knew that for roller derby to become a major attraction, you had to go to the media center, not just of the country, but of the world, and that was New York.
Leo was desperate to succeed in the Big Apple, so he decided to try a novel approach for reaching new fans: television.
The movies, all the venues, the sporting events were scared to death of television. They thought that it was going to be the ruination of any place that you went to pay for something because people could sit home and be entertained free. And Leo had a totally opposite attitude. He said that television is going to make the roller derby.
The first 2 nights in New York were a disappointment. And the third night, the night roller derby would debut on network television, the crowds were no better.
There weren't enough people in the building to look good, so they moved everybody to one side of the building, and they televised this game.
The fledgling CBS network broadcast that first live roller derby game in November of 1948. Leo was right. Television would make roller derby a star.
When we got back to the building about 6:45, we couldn't get near the building. That one telecast filled up the Armory.
The police had to be called and put the stanchions out in front and line people around the blocks.
That first broadcast was the beginning of a long relationship between television and the Derby. And their biggest successes were yet to come.
This is the roller derby. They call it America's fastest growing sport. That it is.
And the Madison Square Garden would be sold out 3 weeks before the game. There wouldn't be a ticket available.
On our road trips, every venue we went to for 4 months was sold out. Every venue.
By the early 1970s, roller derby was at the pinnacle of its success. The person most credited with that success was Leo Seltzer's son, Jerry, who took over the organization in 1959.
In 1959, roller derby was at one of its lowest ebbs. And in order to produce the games, we had to take over a converted garage in East Oakland, put in bleachers that held about 150 people, and we televised live from that location.
The sport Jerry inherited had fallen on hard times, but he had two weapons that would turn it all around. The first was a new breed of player that was just coming on the scene.
My second year, the team was kind of stripped down. We had all kids on the team, and I was one of the kids. It was average age 21, and we had the opportunity to do everything we'd ever seen, and nobody's stopping you.
There was no obstacle that you couldn't overcome, no matter what it was, no matter what they threw at us, 1,000 miles overnight. Sure, we can be there and we'll do the game, you know.
Jerry's second weapon was the Derby's old ally, television.
We started to syndicate the game, eventually ending up on 110 stations on videotape.
And television made the difference.
Television was never a moneymaker, but it was a very successful sales tool. Viewers learned about the game through television, then flocked to the arenas to see it live.
You're used to working for 25, 30,000 people every night, you know, and it's a nice feeling to hear them roar out there, because you hear them roar, but you also hear the change coming in.
Fans came to watch the game, and they came to root for their favorite players. People like Mike Gammon, Ann Calvello, Jan Vallow, Buddy Atkinson Jr., and Nick Scopas.
The people and the noise, the electricity from the crowd would just carry you, and it would make you do things that you didn't think you were capable of doing.
I stand in the infield waving my Italian and Austrian hands, and all of a sudden I turn around and there's a chair in my hand, you know, and everything. And they says, well, we saw you. I says, yeah, but did the 3 referees see me?
Probably the most famous male player of the day was Charlie O'Connell. O'Connell was blessed with incredible athletic ability and a natural aggression that was well known by his competitors. But the Derby's biggest star was a California farm girl named Joan Weston.
I want to tell you a story that you won't believe, but I fell in love last Friday evening with the girl I saw on the barroom TV screen.
Joan was another natural athlete who could have excelled at any sport, but the Derby was one of the few places where female athletes could earn a living.
If you saw Ann Calvello going around the track with Joan Weston and they were maybe 10, 15 feet apart, you'd know something was going to happen. When they got together, it was going to be fireworks.
Joni's abilities on the track were second to her nature off the track. She was the Derby's real-life sweetheart.
She is the one person in Derby and in my life that has made the most difference. She was a great person, taught me how to skate, took me under her wing when I was young, was captain on my team when I made Rookie of the Year. I mean, just nurtured me and did everything for me.
If you were in trouble, Joan Weston would help you. And I'm talking about honest-to-God help.
And sometimes, you know, they would knocker for being in a sport that they really didn't know very much about. And they didn't realize that she was probably the best in that sport. She just took it all with a grain of salt and kept on going, put her head down and took off again, you know. And that was the way Joni always operated.
Joan Weston and the other Derby players finished the 1973 season before a sellout crowd at their favorite venue, Madison Square Garden. None of them knew it at the time, but this was not only the Derby's last appearance at the Garden, it would be the roller derby's last appearance forever. Roller Derby's 1973 season ended with a sellout crowd at Madison Square Garden. But shortly after that game, Jerry Seltzer called a meeting with the skaters.
And Jerry just stood in front of the room, in front of everybody, and said, whatever the date was, and whatever the next date was, roller derby will cease to exist.
We've reached the point where we cannot sustain it any longer. We can't continue to pay for the amount of teams we have.
So I went up to him and I says, Jerry, you know, I don't know what anybody else has said to you, but I'm sorry.
It was probably the worst time of my life because nobody ever would believe that roller derby was really going to go away.
Nick Scopas heard the news from his wife, Joan Weston.
And she was almost in tears. And I said, what's the matter with you? She says, we're not going to skate anymore. Jerry's shutting it down. What in the hell am I going to do now?
The Derby had weathered many storms in its history, but changing economies had finally brought it to an end. After 37 years of thrilling audiences, roller derby was dead.